Let's get on with the show. A little bit about me, Chris Ballard. I'm the CEO, Passivhaus Canada. I had a number of jobs in my in my life, but I'll tell you, all of them lead me to this conclusion that Passivhaus standards for both new and retrofit buildings answer many of our environmental and building challenges, things like addressing health and resilience, comfort, low energy, and of course, affordability. It's for these reasons that I've become a big booster of Passivhaus and met a growing number of people right across this country who are strong advocates for Passivhaus, the Passivhaus building standards. So I'm asked, who is Passivhaus Canada? Well, we are a national member-based not-for-profit. We are the Canadian affiliate of the Passivhaus Institute. We advocate for Passivhaus high-performance building standards with government and industry and the public. We educate and build capacity around Passivhaus standards. We organize events, regional and national, and we provide member and technical services. So consider joining our organization. You can subscribe to our newsletter for free. We have some pictures here of real Passivhaus people doing real Passivhaus things in terms of meeting and learning. And I will say it's been a real pleasure working with these folks. Passivhaus architects, engineers, contractors are people who are in the trenches building these buildings, so they know firsthand the challenges. One observation I've made that holds true is that they share. The Passivhaus folks over a coffee in the evening will work together to solve common problems, even though during the day they're fierce competitors. At night, we work together, we share all sorts of issues and concerns. So I want to say that today's guests, Tracy Johnson and Vaisman. Tracy oversaw the interfit and build of the Salmon Passivhaus, which is in the Danforth area of Toronto. Her other job is as a Director of Health Systems Analysis and Emerging Issues at the Canadian Institute for Health Information. She lives with her husband and 2 children in this beautiful Toronto home. Vaisman is no stranger to many of us in the Passivhaus world. He's project manager of building sciences at WSP. Is trained as an architect and as a building scientist. He's also a certified Passivhaus designer and a real supporter of our organization. So a little bit about Passivhaus. Our ancestry is Canadian. This is the Saskatchewan Conservation House. It was built in 1977 during the first OPEC oil crisis by Dr. Orr and co-workers. It was funded by the Saskatchewan government. And it has been acknowledged by the Passivhaus Institute as an ancestor of today's modern Passivhaus standards. So for those of us in the Passivhaus world, these standards are really coming home to Canada, and I'm so excited to tell people about the roots, or some of the DNA anyway, of today's modern Passivhaus standard, started right here in Canada. There are 5 principles of Passivhaus design. I'm sure those of you who know anything about Passivhaus know them. The first, of course, is super insulation. Second is airtight construction. The third is thermal bridge free. The fourth, high quality windows with solar orientation. And the fifth is a ventilation system with heat recovery. And we'll look at all 5 of these as we tour Tracy's home. But for now, what I would like to do is invite both Tracy and Hermaine to turn on their cameras and microphones and join me as we have a nice conversation. So.
Hello, Chris.
Welcome to both of you to Building Conversations, and it's a real pleasure to have both of you on the show. And as I said earlier on, I've been looking forward to seeing the completed house. We saw it in February. We knew it was going to be beautiful, but So glad to see it, and you must agree, so glad to see it done. So why don't we start, Tracy, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about your house. I think people would be interested to hear about the house and a little bit about why Passivhaus.
So this journey started for us about 8 or 9 years ago. It started here in Toronto with the electrical system on the eastern seaboard going down. And then in the area of Toronto, we were living in Eglinton, Mount Pleasant area. So we experienced that blackout during the summer. And then about 2 or 3 years later, we had another blackout at Christmas time where we spent 5 days without electricity. And that was the part of the impetus for both of us. Both of our parents also lived through the ice storms in Ottawa and Montreal previous to that. So it started a conversation in our house about, could we reduce our dependency on the grid so that I didn't lose freezer fulls of food, or we didn't have to move out of our home because we were too cold to stay in it. We've always been interested, you know, as soon as you bring kids into the world, you start to become much more interested in conservation of any kind. So we were really interested. That discussion evolved into one that said, we'd like to decrease our carbon footprint. We'd like to renovate an existing house so that we reuse it. And we'd like to build a healthy home so that the products we put in our home aren't off-gassing and unhealthy for us. So we did a fair amount of reading prior to starting to search, but we realized that the key to being able to do this was to find a good architectural firm. So my husband had done a fair amount of reading, and I had been reading the different papers and flags for good firms to go to. And Coolearth, we interviewed 3 different firms, and Coolearth was the one that we felt most comfortable with. So we ended up going with them. We moved closer to the concept of Passivhaus when we were talking to Hermé and Sheena about this. We're very much drawn to the concept of net zero, and if we could move towards net zero, then Passivhaus seemed to be the best way to go to do it. And a lot of the principles that you listed, Chris, resonate with us, like having, you know, a ventilation system that ensures we have lots of allergies in this house that ensure you have good air quality all the time.
Right, good, very good. And Hermine, when you first met Tracy, what were your initial impressions of how you would be able to, together with Coolearth, be able to meet the needs of her family?
So yeah, so we met Tracy maybe 4 years ago at the very beginning when they were starting to look for a house. And I think from the get-go, when they listed all the things that, you know, she just mentioned, we thought, you know, Passivhaus is like a perfect fit for you guys. And certainly it didn't take them much time to say yes to Passivhaus, or at least, you know, let's have that as a main exploration. You know, at the very beginning, everyone needs more information. So that was the key thing. We also added up the healthy materials component, which, you know, Passivhaus is not particularly focused on that, but it was about energy efficiency, resiliency, but it was also you know, the type of materials that we were going to use for the house. So we spent a couple of years, maybe, or a year and a half, while they were looking for a place, and, you know, we got together every 3 months maybe, and we kind of there were more questions, so we used those meetings to you know, get to know each other and to be able to apply what they were needing, or actually to confirm that Passivhaus was the right path according to what they need
for them. So listen,
so Chris, I might add too that, you know, I credit Hermé and Sheena with educating us more on Passivhaus, as well as Passivhaus Canada. So we went to one of the earlier Passivhaus conferences, as well as there's a tour associated with that, but as well, Hermé and Sheena hooked us up to see a number of different Passivhauses in the city as well as outside the city. So all of those things, we really credit Coolearth with educating us.
Excellent, very good. And we hear that story time and again where there is not great awareness within the general public of Passivhaus. We're hoping to change that in the coming years. And so people learn through their architects. So here is the house as it stands today, Tracy. There is some work left to do, you've told us, but talk to me, tell me about this house. How big is it? What was it before you arrived? What did it look like?
So the house is now slightly over 1,700 square feet. Before we arrived, the house was that brick house that you can see. It was built in 1941. It had the traditional front entrance next to the window you can see on the front of it right now. Three small bedrooms upstairs, one bathroom, one kitchen, and a basement that was partially finished. It really had very, very little work done on it in the past 20 years, and that was ideal for us because we were also not looking to rip things out that had just been put in.
Right, right.
The house was also filled with asbestos. It was built in 1941 by an engineer, good insulating product, so we had a fair amount of remediation to do before we could start work.
Oh boy. What were some of the challenges you found early on, Hermaine?
So the house was very well oriented, and that was part of their looking for. So that was not a challenge. That was a good choice. I think when we were able to open up the house, asbestos was kind of a first shock, and luckily it took a couple of weeks or maybe 3 weeks to remediate. So that was one thing. The second thing was the basement was pretty low, the basement, but we needed to like lower it a little more. And that was a little bit of a technical analysis that we have to do because of TFA, right? The toll floor area. So we wanted to have the basement to be useful. They ended up not having a bedroom there, but it's a space where they have a shop and they can do work. They can work out as well. So that was a little bit of a challenge. But
we do have some before pictures we're showing right now of what the basement looked like. And I would imagine this is a traditional type of basement for this area and this era.
Right. And we also have the retrofit. So as Tracy mentioned, they wanted to maintain as much as they could from the existing house. Throughout the educational process, we also tried to maintain the embodied carbon, or as much as we can, not to demolish and reuse. So we basically on the basement only demolished the slab to lower the basement and add insulation as well. For energy projects, you also need to, you cannot. Excavating on the outside is pretty expensive, and in this case it would have been complicated because of the setbacks on the houses. So the insulation had to be continuous and also from the inside. And we also wanted to maintain the brick. So there was some transitions issues that we needed to address.
Right, right. What exactly did you do in the basement?
So we ended up not underpinning because the engineer allowed us to provide a 60-degree angle from the footings. So we fill with insulation at the bottom, and then we made an upturn. And as you have to fill up the wall with insulation, because there's a lot of insulation that we added, it doesn't really see when you on the finished product, you don't see that that step, but we were able to kind of fake it. Yeah. So that was a good solution. Yeah.
So that was a good solution. And I've got a picture. The next slide I have is sort of the finished room with the HRV and some of the other things. But Tracy, what's your? I guess let's take a step back for a second. And what's, you moved in a week or so before the pandemic was declared. Tell us a little bit about what's it like to live in this house.
So we really love this house, I have to say. One of our other goals was for main floor living for my husband and I. So we basically, the top floor has one bedroom, a large open space, and a bathroom. And we have landed with 2 children in the house who were unexpected. So our son was visiting, helping us move from California when California and the US shut down, and we shut down at the same time. We moved in March the 10th. So he now has an office upstairs, and he is experiencing the solar gains from a passive house directly in his bedroom as he tries to work through the day. And my daughter's in the open space. There's, I think for us, what has been a bit of an adjustment is understanding the systems and how they work a little bit differently in fact. Like, you know, when you're sitting here in the house compared to in theory when you're building it. So, you know, why has the humidifier started to pump up so fast? What's happening? And we realized that the heat pump in the basement for the hot water heater was drawing in early April all of the water and the heat out of the air. So that the humidifier was compensating big time. So there were things like that to learn and what's happening, you know, so we had a surge in electrical power more recently and the heat pump turned off. Well, it doesn't like surges in power. And so understanding that the unit that is on the wall does register some things, like it will tell me when I need a filter, but I have to go in when there's something wrong to figure out on the mechanical list exactly what's happening. So it's learning about those new systems, I would say. But no new house smell, really low levels of noise. So 5 doors down, they were jackhammering someone's cement to get at a gas line. Honestly, when we closed the door, we couldn't hear it. My neighbors were all outside on their lawns looking at something, which is why we went out to see what was going on. So low noise levels. Everybody's allergies are great. When we were in the condo, my husband said, I'm really looking forward to a house with a Hepa filter and a filtration system. That's been really lovely. And the temperatures with the heat pump and the way it was designed, the temperatures between the 2 floors are pretty nicely modulated compared to, we had sort of that 3-story house before and 4 stairs. So this is a very nice system.
This is a nice system. So you're getting good quality air, you're getting comfort, you're getting some real benefit around sound and quietness. You know, how at the end of the day, how does that make people feel living in the house?
Well, I think that we're all, you know, we're still continually delighted. I think we still feel like we're living in a bit of a hotel because we got to design it. And the children are still working on, the kids are still helping us work out some of the kinks, like the built-ins that we want to do and those kinds of things. So everybody's still, you know, we wake up a bit excited every day just because we love the house. And it's working. Wow. Somebody asked me the other day if there was anything I would change, and the answer was no. We actually did a really good job of planning it with Herman and team, and we like the results.
Right. Well, I was going to say that's a good, that's a sign of a good working relationship between yourselves and your architects and your contractor, that you're quite happy with everything that's there. You know, getting back to the operational aspects, so you've gone through a few glitches, you've had to pull the manuals out a bit. Do you think it'll be that much, will it be difficult on an ongoing basis, or is it just a bit of a learning curve?
No, that's a really good question. It's just a bit of a learning curve, like any systems you have in the house. And we're a bit nerdy, so we're very interested in what the systems are doing. And so we probably want to understand it more than other people from that perspective. So one of the things we haven't done yet is download an app that will allow us to check on the air quality and the connection between the systems, but we are intending to do that kind of thing. So no.
Yeah. And I do find that with some of my Passivhaus friends, that they can tell me how much carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide it's in the room at any given time, and it's fascinating. Sometimes a little worrisome, actually, to find that out when you have a room crowded with people, how the CO2 levels start going up. But I wanted to learn, or to get your thoughts more about, you know, this sustainable house, because and Herman pointed out, you were very focused on the types of building materials. So theoretically, well, practically, Passivhaus is materials neutral. That's changing with Passivhaus Canada as we begin to focus more on embodied carbon. But you took it one step further. You didn't want any VOCs. You didn't want the off-gassing, those kinds of things. So tell us about that and how's that worked.
So the history of that a little bit is the folks in my house have environmental allergies. I'm allergic. I've got sensitivities of some kind to glues, and I'm also in the health field. So honestly, living in a place that is with clean air was really important to us. We don't buy new cars in our house. And part of the reason is new car smell. I don't need to break them in. We buy secondhand cars for a number of reasons, but that is one of them. So for us, air quality and having sustainable building products was really important. It's interesting because you can say that, like I'll give you an example. When it came to putting in the kitchen countertops, I asked them what they were using to glue things on, and she forgot to tell me that they were using an epoxy, and I could not be in the house. And I learned that on the day that they were coming to put this in. So there's things like, you know, it doesn't matter sometimes how many questions you ask about glues and what things people are using. They do not see, the people who are applying these products don't see them in the same way as I do, as someone who's irritated by them or a consumer. So it does require a lot of questions. Now, we have no new house smell here at all. Like, there is nothing. It's the air smells terrific, and the only thing that you smell in it is if you cook something that's particularly, because we have no external vents in the kitchen, if you cook something that's got a particular odor to it, then I just boost the HRV.
And that takes
that out.
Yeah. So, you know, yours is rather a Passivhaus plus, we'll call it, in terms of selecting those materials. And Hermaine, to you, how difficult was it to build with these types of materials? Are they a common material or a known material? Did you have to do a lot of research to find materials that would satisfy Tracy and her husband?
So the materials we use are common materials, and you can buy them off the shelf. Not many people, we use a lot of cellulose insulation, and you don't have that many installers of cellulose installations, but you do have a few. So we knew about, you know, the difference of materials. So for us was not much of a research time. It was more about how to apply those materials to the type of construction. There was a big, we had a big debate with Tracy about the flat roof, where we were planning to have some spray foam insulation on as a control layer, vapor control layer, at least 2 inches at the top. And when Tracy realized that we were going forward to that, it was like, big no. I told you guys, I don't want any closed cell spray foam in the house. So we have to switch the assembly to a vented flat roof, which was a little bit of a challenge, but it was more about a detailing process than you know, something that it cannot be done. It was okay. There's other ways. We have to redo the detail, and but we accomplished that, yeah.
And we revisited that conversation about kinds of products when it came to the insulation, because inevitably you have budget overruns. Not huge ones, but that was my job, containing costs. And we did have the conversation about being able to use something like blown-in fiberglass in the walls. But again, the footprint for that product and the off-gassing of that product was not something that we wanted to have in the house. So we made the decision to do the blown-in cellulose.
To go with the blown-in cellulose, yeah. Well, I've got a few pictures of some of the work going on at the back of the house, but I want to back up a slide and just have you walk us through your, is this the central nervous system here? Tell us about what you've put in the basement.
Me or she? Who wants to?
We'll start with, why don't we start with you, Hermaine?
Okay, so technically, let's. So this is a very simple system. It's on the left. The big machine actually is the HRV, which is a high efficient machine. That all the black stuff that you see is actually insulation, so you have don't have heat losses. So it's a very efficient machine, and that's the machine that provides the fresh air. And as Tracy mentioned, they also can boost the machine for to have an extra extraction for when they cook or when they take a shower. There is a preheater when the temperature goes below -5 that turns on, and so because the machine gets frozen at below -5. So that's basically what you see. And then on the right, you also see the Hepa filter, which is not required by Passivhaus, but you know, they particularly 1 and 1. So we added up an additional layer of filtration, which, you know, it's there, and you can see the filter. I don't think that's the Hepa one, the one I'm showing, but you have two filters there.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
then at the bottom, you see the heat pump,
Mm-hmm.
which is the smaller heat pump that you can get
Yeah.
on the market. It's we didn't need as much, actually. We needed almost half of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, load wise, but we installed that one. The good thing is those heat pumps are modulating, so they don't actually are on and off.
Mm-hmm.
They can work on the amount of heat that they are required, or they modulate, so they actually don't work at the maximum capacity if it's not needed.
Well,
And the
it's
good
not.
thing of that is also provides cooling, right? And particularly in Ontario, we need some dehumidification in the summer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the, you know, it provides like a twofold. It's a heating system and also a cooling system.
And that's obviously a high efficiency hot water heater, electric hot water heater in the background.
Yeah. So we, you know, this is also part of the exploration. So we explore many options, the direct heating, with instant heating, and, you know, cost wise. And so we ended up using a hybrid heat pump regular hot water tank, which,
Right.
you know, once the trace is in, we keep talking with them a lot, and they you know, in the summer they ended up turning on the hybrid system, the heat pump, so it provides some dehumidification and cooling.
Mm-hmm.
But in the winter, it seems that, you know, they have to turn it as a regular hot water tank.
Okay.
It's too cooling and too dehumidifying in the winter is what we learned. So we didn't know that. And of all the systems in the basement, that's the thing that makes more noise than anything else.
Right.
Really? It's the hot water heater.
Yep.
So it's a well insulated in the wintertime. It's a well insulated, high efficiency hot water tank. And in the summertime, it's got the additional capacity to cool and dehumidify.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, one thing, you see those those big rounded tubes. Those are silencers. So
good.
you don't even get
they're the mufflers.
the mufflers. Yeah. So it's funny because this brand, it looks like a muffler more than the other brands that are square. But anyway, this you know, you actually don't. Well, Tracy, you can talk more about it, but that's a way of not even hearing the machine on the rooms.
Yeah. And is that the case, Tracy?
So the hot water heater is the noisiest. I am interested in, like, I hear a lot of sounds in the house. So in the front bedroom, that big window in the front is our bedroom. And because the systems are underneath it, I think that you get a little bit more of an echo through the heating duct. Or through the ducts, so I can hear when I boost the system. I know for sure it's on boost. When you put it down, it's quiet, and it's quieter than anything we've ever had. So it doesn't bother me at all. Yeah.
So I'm interested if you've been able to in these pandemic times, have you been able to have any family outside of your two children or any friends pop by for a quick visit to see or experience, actually, because I think that's the most important thing with a passive house, is to actually experience it rather than look at it. Have you had a chance to have anyone tour?
We haven't really. I have to say that it's one of the most disappointing things that's happened. Is we were going to have a big open house and entertain a lot. I was looking forward to that after 5 years of moving and building houses. But no, we haven't really had an opportunity to do that. We hope as this pandemic squares itself out, we will. You know, everybody's really interested because they've heard us talk about nothing else for about 5 years. So people are still interested enough to ask us, you know, how it went and what we're enjoying about the house. And we've shown pictures around for sure. But yes, we're looking forward to having people here, especially this great room, which we built purposefully. My husband's family's a very large Irish Catholic family. And so we built this to host all of those people.
Great. Yeah, well, one day soon, we hope. I know when I visited in February, you were talking about the front of this building and why you were keeping it because of the neighborhood. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Maybe what some of the challenges were, Tracy and Hermaine?
So maybe I'll just start with the history
Sure.
of that. So for me, things for us as a family, recycle and reuse was very important. A lot of the older neighborhoods in Toronto are being transformed with new buildings.
Yeah.
That's fine, but I very much didn't want a stuccoed house that looked out of place. I wanted something, and so by keeping the brick on the front, we kept some of the kind of look and feel of the 1941 house.
Right.
We also bought the house from the original owner, and we met him the night that we put the bid in, and he said, you know, we really wish that somebody would just, you know, add on to the house and keep pieces of it. And I said to him that we wanted to work with the house. And more recently, our real estate agent ran into him, and he said to her, tell them that we're very pleased with what they've done.
Oh, that's nice to hear. And your neighbors must be happy.
I think that when we cut some of the trees down at the back, I think our neighbors got much more of a view of our house than they want. So they're looking forward to me planting a garden.
Okay.
They're curious, you know, my neighbors would love to see the inside. So, you know, the build went fine, and I think they're glad not to have trucks all over the street, because on this particular block, this certainly is one of the more recent renovations. So I think they're happy about that part of it. And I think they are happy. Like, I've had people walking by who don't live around me, but live in the neighborhood, who've said, we really like the fact that you kept the house. So.
Nice. Nice, very nice. So what were your challenges? What were the challenges for building and designing, Hermaine?
So we, there's a program, right? Because they do want to have a bedroom, a washroom with an area. So when you keep the existing house, you're limited by sizes because it's already set. So we did have a lot of back and forth on the sizes of the bedroom, basically, and the laundry. You also need, like, you know, a minimum size for the stairs and the hallway. There's so much you can, you know, stretch. So those were some programming challenges. Also, insulation you want to maximize. So you have the brick, which doesn't insulate anything. The good thing is we thought it was a double white brick, and ended up being a balloon frame. So when we opened it up the house, we realized that we had another 4 inches of insulation. So that was something good that it was sent without knowing.
Very good, very good. So go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah. Another thing I'd say, so when you were asking about the comfort of the house, so the house is really quite airtight. We've had the blower test done, but we notice in the summer, so I've got the heat pump on just enough to cool. Like, I don't want to be ice cold. We just want to take the humidity and the edge off. If I use the oven, we all notice in the summer. So that's one of those changes, because the heat is held in, and it very quickly warms this room up.
Yeah. So I know in talking with other Passivhaus folks, one of the things they had to get used to was if they were having a group of people over, or even a couple extra visitors, how they had to up the airflow on their air exchange to compensate for the extra heat. I mean, we are all walking 100-watt light bulbs, incandescent light bulbs. We put off that amount of energy. When you put 4 people in a room, you change the dynamics of that room. So that's been the learning curve for other folks in a Passivhaus, sort of that pre-planning to get the air circulating before their guests come over and visit with them. So like you, I would imagine when you have the oven on, it affects the entire house.
Yeah. So this is a big debate in all, like, presentations. So we have a skylight because they wanted to have a skylight. That was the main reason. Having a skylight, they ended up choosing a super cool one that turns on with a remote. So something, Tracy, that you mentioned, that when it's like when there is a peak, they actually realize that they you know, open the skylight for I don't know how long, and it helps flushing the house. So you're not reliant on just a mechanical system to boost and wait, and, you know, telling no, let's wait, you know, until Passivhaus like balance out. You actually allowed to open windows, and you could open them in the winter for a little bit.
And it's worked really well. We've had to use it more, the window at the back as well as the skylight, more than I thought, because we put in an induction stove, and it's very quick and it's very hot. So I've ended up with smoke in here quickly, and we've had to clear that out fast. And the skylight works really well for that.
Right.
Yes. Well, that's a common misconception that in a passive house you can't open the windows, but in fact,
Right. Yeah.
it's encouraged. That's another way of getting fresh air into the house. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
What's going on? The pictures we have up now, we've got 4 pictures of construction on the back of the house. What is happening here? Can you tell me a little bit about the construction here, Romain?
Yeah, so we architecturally was very simple square type of house. We did have these corners that we wanted that gave a little bit more of a fun component to the house. We did
Mhm.
calculated the overhangs as well. That's where the stairs are, and they do provide shading in the summer for the large
Okay.
windows. So that's kind of the architectural setting. And then we play with cladding to give a little bit more of a fun expression to the house.
Mhm.
And during the winter, you get more sun because it's lower. So and
Yeah.
that beautiful birch tree will open up also and allow the sun to come in. So that's
Right.
basically very simple principles
You
apply.
enjoy those. You enjoy the solar gains during the winter time.
Yeah, yeah,
I've
and also
got
the views, right? Yeah.
yeah, and wonderful view, absolutely, of a newly landscaped backyard, right, Tracy?
Absolutely.
uh, Tracy, just I've got a few interior pictures now because we all love to see the inside of a house. So tell us about the finish. Tell us about what your thinking was with the finish here. May not have anything to do with Passive House, but boy, it's beautiful.
So I was looking for continuous flooring because it isn't, well, this space looks quite large. Overall, the house is not that large. So I was looking for natural flooring that I could carry right on through the whole house. And I went with, that's 4¼ inch maple. And I went
Mhm.
with the lighter coloring because I was afraid as we got deeper into the house, if there wasn't, the floors weren't light, it would just look cavish and darker.
Right.
So we
Hmm.
achieved that with the hardwood throughout. It's a matte finish and it's really lovely, easy to clean and easy to maintain, which was part of the goal. The fireplace that you can see in the right-hand picture is a stove, kind of combo wood burner fireplace. And we wanted that because we do intend to be, we have no fossil fuels in this house. We do intend to have electricity and solar panels at some point in time. And should we lose our source of electricity, I wanted to be able to, having lived through ice storms and the electrical power shortages, outages that we've experienced, I wanted to be able to heat the house if we needed to heat the house. So that's why
Right.
the fireplace. We went with the smallest we could find.
Yeah.
And that was one of the challenges that Hermé had with respect to the architecture.
Yeah.
The kitchen is it's a European kitchen. It didn't cost more than Canadian kitchens, but it had a very clean look, which is what I wanted.
Hmm.
We have Caesar stone, thinner than normal on the top. The entire look at the house is very, very clean and modern, which suits my husband and I. No tchotchkes. The stairs were they fit with the style we wanted for the house, and given that they take up so much of that entrance room and space, we
Yeah.
wanted them to be open so that they wouldn't have a feeling of blocking your
Mhm.
light or your flow in the house.
Right. Right. So the glass, yeah, the glass and it opens that up and it's safety as well. And there's
Yeah.
some more pictures. We've got the kitchen. We've got that large room. Uh, so you talked about a stove, and I know sometimes when I mention that to Passive House building designers, they wince. But Herman, how difficult was it to work a stove in, and what did you have to do to build that in and make sure the house was still a passive house?
So first of all, I love fireplaces. Let's put it that way, right? Certainly
Okay.
for Passivhaus, you don't really need it. When you do the calculations, actually the expectation is if you turn it on, you will need to open a window.
Yeah.
We did with Coolearth, close to Passivhaus up north, that they installed a very similar, same brand. It's a little different, the
Mhm.
type. And they did tell us that when they turn on like the stove with the fire because they like it, they have to open a window. And this is in Paris Sound, right?
Mhm.
So the challenge is that you need to have a very good one. This is an European fireplace that is very airtight. You cannot install anyone, because you will have a penalty when you do the blower door test. We actually, the last blower door test got us into the targets, but we know we got a hit, like, because we did one before installing the fireplace,
Right.
and we know we got a hit on that. So that's something you have to account in the overall balance of airtightness, that you're going to lose a little bit, because it is airtight, but it's not as airtight as a Passivhaus requires.
Now,
So
as a passive house door or window, in terms of
Right.
that type of seal.
Right.
But they are a wonderful aesthetic, that's for sure. So so there's another myth. Not only can you open windows, and are encouraged to do so in a passive house, if done right, you can also have a wood burning stove, which for many people, myself included, would be the deal breaker, quite frankly, if I wasn't allowed to have one of those. So Tracy, as we get towards the Q&A session, because we've gone through a half an hour already, sort of some of the conclusions that you would draw. You mentioned costing, without getting into too many details. How affordable was a passive house for you compared to other types of building? When you compare them, would you do it again?
I oversaw the project management in the second half of the project. So we had a builder who put the double walled construction up for us, and from the Intello onwards, Hermé and I did that work together, and that was really key to being able to finish this house. I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend that when you're building a passive house, only because a couple of things that are lessons learned from my perspective, and Hermé can talk a bit more, but one is about the people, and one is about the systems, so the ventilation systems. So on the people front and the trade front, my overwhelming sense is that the industry's not quite ready for passive house yet. The industry is working its way towards that, but they're not quite ready. So the supply of trades who've done this before and who understand it is scarce in Toronto. And as a result, you have to very carefully pick the trades. So the people that you pick have to know that they are going to be working in a way, know that they're going to be working in a way that they've never worked before. They have to want to learn, and they have to want to be part of a team. So the architect here is key. And a lot of the builders in Toronto are not used to, especially in housing construction, residential construction, are not used to working with an architect. So that's like one of the key pieces. And you have to be willing to let go of people fast if they're not working out, because if you've done the passive house tutorial about not punching holes wherever they want to punch holes and they still keep doing that, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble, and you do a lot of rework because of it.
Because of that, yeah. I will say, when we had a conversation in February, you talked about the frustration of installing your windows, the passive house window, and having to reach out to a company in Guelph, Ontario, to come to Toronto to install the windows.
So the windows are really heavy. And if you've never installed them before, they're a daunting process. Regular windows, people basically put regular windows in a hole with a couple of slots and some spray foam insulation, and they call it done, and they slap some trim around it. These have to be put in really carefully, and they can be daunting. The window at the back of the house, the larger one, I think is about 300 pounds or more. And the company in Guelph was able to put it in with mostly 2 guys, and it took them 3 to lift it and a spotter. And all the other windows in the house, they were able to do with two fellows, including the doors. But some of the other folks we talked to just didn't even know how to approach it. The other system I would say, Chris, that I would just say that you need to pay a fair amount of attention to is, for double wall construction and for the different ways you can insulate, builders can come up with different ways to do that probably all, can follow passive house guidelines. But applying the Intello, the actual insulation you use if you're doing dense packed cellulose, and the system the actual systems that you need in the house for ventilation are the things that you need to pay a lot of attention to. And the people that come in to help you need to be able to have a focus on the detail. They need to know to enable you to be able to put those systems in.
Right.
And I think we didn't, we had a plan for the ventilation very early. Hermé and I haven't really been able to come up with what we would have done differently, but it needed a lot of conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a really honest appraisal of where we're at as we grow in Ontario. As an association, we are now putting a lot more emphasis on trade education and design consultant training in Ontario, because of these comments that if we want to grow the Passivhaus standard for all the good reasons you talk about, we need to make sure that we have people who can do the designing, the contractors and the trades to do the very fine detailed work that needs to be done. So it's a fair comment you're making. Hermé, what's your take on this?
So my take on this is it's very interesting, because when we brought this company from Well that already have experience doing this, it's not just because they did it, they also got trained, and you can see them working, and they were stress-free. They knew how to do the thing. It was not more complicated than, it didn't take them more time than the regular guys. So what my take is, it's not about, oh, this is more difficult. No, the difficulty is to learn a new way. Once you know that new way, it's not more difficult. And it was super interesting to see them working. We actually, they show us everything, and it was like smooth. And so I think that's
well. And I would say my evaluation, Chris, is there's been such a demand in residential housing in Toronto that the prices are driven up quite high, and the builders have become used to building in traditional ways, and they earn a fair amount of money. Like they understand what their margins are to do that job really well. So there's not a lot of an impetus for them right now to change the way that they work.
Right. Right. So if why change? Why go through the bother of learning? Because we know the learning curve can cost, right? That's what we hear from people. Their first Passivhaus project is the most expensive one because they've never done it before, and therefore there's a learning curve. Their second, third, and fourth are much more cost efficient because they've been there, they've done that, they've learned a lot of the tricks of the trade. So, I mean, how was it, and Tracy as well, how was it working with the city in terms of building inspectors, planning approvals? Was there any difficulty because this was Passivhaus?
Go ahead, Hermé.
No, actually, it was fun and rewarding to get the inspectors. We had problems in construction. You always have the inspector coming in asking for this, and this, and something goes wrong. But at the end of like the tension moments, it was like, oh, by the way, guys, this is super cool what you guys are doing. And they were staying for half an hour, 20 minutes, asking why you do this. It doesn't have to do, we had an inspection, framing inspection, but we were doing some, I don't know, ducting or stuff. And they were saying, I'm not here for this, but why you're doing this? So they were asking a lot. And so that was really, you can see, I remember one of the inspectors saying, you guys are doing such a quality job. This is great. It's on the end, right? It's after listing all the problems we had. So no, with the city was, we actually didn't have any different type of, setbacks. We had delays on permit approvals, but that's not because of Passivhaus.
That's not because of that. Well, that's good. That's good to hear. And I mean, Toronto really has, together with Vancouver and Hamilton and Ottawa, have taken the lead on pushing high performance building. And so it's good to hear that not only do they have those policies in place, but they have planning departments and building departments that actually understand what you're trying to do.
So I don't know if go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Hermé. I was going to say, I'm not sure they necessarily understand, but.
Right. No, but what I'm saying, so we had a visit from the city while we were constructing it. I don't know if it was the day you came, but we have 10 people from the city coming and having a tour. And so we also wanted to kind of, they know what we are doing. And we just presented last week also Empire Homes Toronto. We presented the house as well.
Mhm.
So no, certainly the city of Toronto is there's a lot of people inside that are knowledgeable or are willing to learn.
Right.
So yeah, I would love to
Excellent.
see it.
I haven't had the final, so the electrician wants to finish off the lighting on the front porch before we have the final electrical. I've called for the final plumbing inspections and ventilation, but the city is not visiting houses right now, and our inspector has told me I'm on his list for a while.
Okay.
So we'll get there with those finals.
Okay.
But no, it was, it's interesting. As a homeowner, I did the inspections with the city, as well as Hermed did some educating with them. And, I was educated well enough in this process with the architect to be able to answer their questions. And it's interesting to know more than your inspector does. But he was very, he was very interested in what we were doing. And he would say to me, quite frankly, I read your plans for ventilation. And he asked me about who I had consulting with me because he wanted to ensure that they were done to, done to an engineer's standards. So I told him that. And once we were able to say that to him, he was fine, because he was frank. He said, I don't really understand the system you put in. So I walked him around and I talked about it, but.
Right. Well, that's good. And I've heard in other areas where the immediate reaction is, no, I don't understand it, so I'm not going to approve it, even if an engineer signed off on it. So I certainly give that particular inspector kudos for wanting to learn more anyway. And as these homes and this style of building becomes more and more common, you're going to see they're going to have more of these types of inspections. So we have a bunch of questions. Go ahead, Herman.
No, I just want to address it's also good to get a good team of engineers. We had mentor at the mechanical engineer that he was willing to and able to respond when needed, and also we had a structural engineer that also helped out a lot.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we have a number of questions from the audience, but I guess Tracy, I'm going to leave the last comment to you. Would you do it again?
Yes, we're really pleased with the results. I wouldn't do it the way I did it again with me in charge of the second half, but yes, we love the house.
Yeah, well, I mean, my comment would be, having toured the house and having seen the results, I would say if you ever get tired of your day job, there may be another job awaiting for you as a Passivhaus consultant, quite frankly, because you've done a fantastic job. And kudos to the architect and to you, Herman, for all the work that you did. And I'll stop here and turn the floor back to Stephanie, because there are some questions. Correct, Stephanie?
Yes, there are, and we may not get to all of them. So what I'm going to suggest that if we don't get to your question because we've almost run out of time, we can put you in touch with Herman, or we can try and answer those questions for you through email. So
Sure.
Bear with us while we do this. So the first question is, were there any difficulties in getting or using Canadian-made components for the construction?
Yes and no. Window-wise, the pricing is almost the same as the European ones. And it also varies a lot. When you start doing the design, then there's new companies coming up. It took us like maybe a year until getting the windows. So there are many more window manufacturers now than a year and a half ago when we ordered them, or a year ago. So we had European windows. The mechanical system is more of a challenge. We have to import it. I don't think there are any for small houses, but all the ducting and all the other stuff are Canadian. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Great. In one of the pictures there where we had the two large round canisters on the HRV duct, what were those two large canisters? Are they silencers?
Yes, those are silencers, yeah.
Okay, is there a big stack effect?
There's no stack effect because there is no air leakage. The stack effect has to do with when you open a window. I mean, you could have stack effect for ventilation if you open the window upstairs, so you flush the house in a very good manner. I'm not sure if, Tracy, you guys open up windows upstairs to flush the house in the summer.
Yeah, we have. We have. Like, and sometimes I've turned the system off just to open the windows. Like, you know, if it's a cool
Right.
enough, if it's a cool enough day and it's nice and you can get an
Mhm.
airflow.
Right,
Yeah.
so that's stack effect. If you're talking about
Yeah.
stratification, which is like getting more hot on top and the bottom, there's some things that, but you know, I know that the air conditioning can keep up with hotter days in the summer because it's there, we have an air conditioning basically.
Yeah,
Okay.
the back of the house, you do get a little bit of the heating up on the second floor, the stratification with the windows at the back of the house, so they don't impact the energy model that strongly, but
Mhm.
the solar gains are quite strong from it. So that normally would not be a challenge, but because I have someone who's got an office up there, we've adjusted the airflow to increase it and seem to have solved that problem, but probably over the long term, some more shading on those windows exteriorly would be a good idea.
Mhm.
I think we've run out of time, so I'll leave it at that. And questions that, again, for anyone who's listening, you can reach out to us at info@Passivhaus Canada, and we'll answer those questions or direct you to someone who can answer those. So thank you very much for all the questions.
Yeah, good. And there's a lot of interest in today's show. So thank you to Tracy and Herman. What I will say, what I wanted to say is I'm not sure exactly who's on the show and what your interests are. But if you're interested in learning more, if you're a homeowner or someone who's interested in building to Passivhaus standard, please visit our website. We have information and courses. We have our basic understanding of Passivhaus building. It's our 50 course for anyone who wants a basic understanding of the core principles. That's a new course for us. We have another course, the 110, the introduction to Passivhaus building standards. It's a little more detailed. Maybe if you're actually going to go build a house, this is the one you should take as well as a homeowner. A lot more information there. Tracy mentioned the lack of trades and training to build to the high performance Passivhaus standard, and I would agree. We have an online program now for tradespeople. It's our 330 course. So there's all sorts of information about it online. As well, we have a flyer for it attached to today's webinar if you want to download that and learn a little bit more. It's fairly, you know, what I find with tradespeople training, there's a little bit of theory, little bit of hands-on, and people get it because Herman will I think agree with this, that building to Passivhaus standard is not rocket science, but it is building science, and you need to understand some of the physics that go into building to the Passivhaus standard, but it's quite doable. In a month from now, I want to just tell you about our next show. We have building conversations with Tim Mcdonald, who is a builder and founding principal of Onion Flats. So we're going from Tracy's home today, a single family unit. We're going to be talking with Tim about the work he's been doing and social housing in the United States, the financing model, the building model that he's using there to drive down the cost of building social housing to Passivhaus standards. In fact, I'll give you a little teaser where he is right now. They're building passive houses for less than they're building code-built homes with all the benefits of the Passivhaus. So we'll leave it there. Again, my thank you to Tracy and Herman for joining me today and for sharing their journey together, we'll say, to do an interfit of a beautiful Toronto building in the Danforth. On one of these slides a few back, I put a bit.ly link to a presentation that Tracy's daughter has put together with lots of pictures, and it sort of takes you from beginning through construction to what it looks like today. So I would encourage you to copy that link and go and visit and see for yourself some of the beautiful things that this house incorporates. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you in another month for a Building Conversations with Tim Mcdonald. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Herman.
Thank you, Chris.
Everybody, be safe until next month. Take care.
Take care.